school and had to overcome that. And these are some experiences you know from growing up because you struggled with dyslexia. So how did you get through that? And did that inspire this book?
This book is, I say all about that. It's for the 8-year-old self, me, who really felt dumb. And I did. I sat in the back of the class. I was just quiet, so they kind of pushed me along in public school, and I kept going. And then I really, really wanted to be a journalist. That's all I wanted to be. And I was like, I can't write. It was horrible. And then I went to community college, and I had this teacher, and she goes, I want you to write for the school paper. I was like, I can't really write. And she goes, well, just write without thinking about, every time I get really emotional, without thinking about spelling or punctuation. And I wrote, I don't remember what the story.
Everyone has been asking the same thing ever since the news started swirling around the internet. Did Jeff Bezos actually buy Vogue magazine for Lauren Sánchez as a wedding gift? And if he didn't, then why does it feel like he basically did? Because, let's be honest, the timeline is just too perfect to ignore. Right after one of the most over-the-top weddings of the decade, Lauren Sánchez suddenly appeared on the digital cover of Vogue. No promo, no reason, just there smiling in a glamorous gown, labeled as Mrs. Bezos. And this wasn't just any appearance either, this was a center stage takeover, followed almost immediately by Anna Wintour stepping down after nearly 4 decades as the editor-in-chief of American Vogue, a move that stunned the fashion world and had everyone from insiders to longtime fans wondering what's really going on behind the scenes. And then it all started to unravel like a high fashion scandal right out of a movie. First, let's talk about that wedding, which looked more like a royal summit mixed with a tech billionaire's fantasy weekend set in Venice, Italy. With an estimated price tag of $50 million, the wedding wasn't just expensive. It was a spectacle complete with drone shows, private gondolas, celebrity guests, and enough luxury to make any normal person's jaw drop. And then boom, not long after the final opera note faded into the Venetian sky, Lauren pops up on Vogue's June digital cover, and just like that, the fashion industry went into full gossip mode. Some called it aspirational, others said it was absurd, and many questioned whether this was just a power move disguised as a romantic gesture. Now, normally a cover like that would come with some kind of reason, maybe a major career moment, a philanthropic campaign, or a groundbreaking fashion collab, but not this time. There was no news, no event, just Lauren being Lauren, newly married and positioned as a cultural figure worth celebrating. The internet did what it does best and spiraled with questions and theories, and the most explosive rumor of all started to gain traction: that Jeff Bezos didn't just buy her a cover. He bought her the whole empire. Vogue and its parent company Condé Nast were supposedly being eyed as part of the ultimate wedding gift, and while Bezos' team denied it outright, claiming Condé Nast isn't for sale and the rumors are completely false, the facts suggest otherwise. Because behind the denials there's a trail of curious events: staff layoffs at Condé Nast, office closures, brand consolidations, all telltale signs of a company slimming down in preparation for a sale. And then there's Anna Wintour, whose exit only added fuel to the fire. Yes, she's still involved at the global level, but losing the title of editor-in-chief of American Vogue felt like the end of an era, and people are wondering whether she stepped down voluntarily or was gently nudged aside to make way for a new regime. And if the timing wasn't suspicious enough, whispers from within the industry suggested that Anna might be preparing to cash out entirely. Some believe she holds equity in Condé Nast, and stepping down now could be part of a larger financial strategy, because if Bezos is indeed circling the company, Anna wouldn't just be walking away from a job. She'd be walking into a massive payday. Now, whether this is all strategic maneuvering or just a strange coincidence, the reality is the same people are talking. The fashion world is buzzing, and it's all centered on the question of what happens when the ultra-rich decide they want to own culture, not just consume it. Because let's face it, putting Lauren Sánchez on the cover of Vogue sent shockwaves. For a reason: she's not a model, she's not a designer, she's not even known for having a unique fashion sense. She's a helicopter pilot, a former TV personality, and now the wife of one of the richest men in the world. And while there's nothing wrong with any of that, it doesn't exactly scream high fashion icon. So when she showed up on the cover, many felt like it wasn't about celebrating a woman. It was about flexing power. It was a signal that money, not merit, was the new currency of influence, and that's what has so many people uneasy. Because Vogue has always been more than a magazine, it's been a gatekeeper, a trendsetter, a voice that defined style for generations, and now it's caught in the middle of a billionaire soap opera where the stakes aren't just about headlines, but about who gets to shape culture going forward. And that's just the beginning. Because as we peel back the layers of this story, what we're left with is a modern fairy tale soaked in luxury but shadowed by questions about control, ego, and what happens when the richest man in the world decides that love isn't enough without a legacy to go with it. So the question that keeps echoing louder with each passing day is, if Jeff Bezos didn't technically buy Vogue, then why does it feel like Lauren Sánchez is already being treated like fashion royalty? Because whether intentional or not, the ripple effects of her Vogue cover combined with Anna Wintour's exit have thrown the fashion world into complete chaos and made it impossible to separate what's real from what's strategic storytelling. Think about the symbolism here. Anna Wintour was the gatekeeper of style for decades. She shaped careers, made icons, and decided what belonged in the glossy pages of fashion's holy grail. And now suddenly she's no longer editor-in-chief, just as Lauren Sánchez lands not one, but two high-profile Vogue moments, first in digital then reportedly in print, all within weeks of her wedding to a man with enough wealth to buy the entire publishing industry 10 times over. Insiders started whispering about how quickly things were moving. Some claimed the Newhouse family, which owns Condé Nast, was softening the ground, trying to charm Bezos into a future deal. Others believe the Sanchez cover was a trial balloon testing the public's reaction before anything official goes down. And while all this unfolds, Lauren's public image is being completely rebranded. Once seen as a background player, a glamorous companion to Bezos, she's now being positioned as a woman of influence, a tastemaker, a possible media figure. And that rebranding feels less like coincidence and more like a calculated rollout. Because you don't land the cover of Vogue without a narrative behind it. And this one is as slick as any we've seen in years. She's not just Mrs. Bezos. She's a modern woman, a pilot, an adventurer, a philanthropist, a symbol of power, partnership, and independence. And while all of that may be true, the packaging, the timing, the rollout, it all feels meticulously curated. And that's where the suspicion begins to harden into belief that this isn't just about fashion, it's about ownership. It's about who gets to influence culture at the highest levels, and whether the traditional rules of taste are being rewritten by money alone. And what happens when one man controls not only what we buy and read and watch, but also what we wear and admire and aspire to become. Because if Bezos ends up owning a stake in Condé Nast, that gives him access to more than just Vogue. We're talking GQ, Vanity Fair, The New Yorker, Architectural Digest, and more, each with its own massive influence on public perception, trends, and even political discourse. And people are rightfully concerned that this kind of consolidation under one name, especially a name already so dominant in tech, commerce, and space exploration, could signal a dangerous turning point for media and creativity. Because these institutions weren't just built on profit. They were built on taste, risk, originality, the willingness to push boundaries, and platform voices that shaped generations. And now, with all eyes on Lauren Sánchez and every move she makes being dissected, the fear is that those values might be replaced by spectacle, by access, by who you marry rather than what you create. And that's not just a shift in leadership, that's a shift in values, one that could ripple out far beyond the pages of a magazine and into the culture at large. It's the kind of story that feels so surreal you almost want to dismiss it as internet gossip. And yet the pieces keep falling into place. The cost-cutting at Condé Nast, the rumors of equity being shuffled around, the real estate consolidations, all standard pre-sale behavior in any major acquisition. And then there's Bezos' history. Remember in 2013 when he quietly bought the Washington Post? There were no leaks, no drama, just a surprise announcement that reshaped the media landscape overnight. So it's not far-fetched to believe he could be doing something similar now, especially with the added twist of a new marriage and the desire to create something lasting, something iconic, something that aligns his legacy with the world of culture and image and luxury. And that brings us to the public backlash. Because while Bezos and Sanchez may be leaning into the fantasy of their high-profile love story, not everyone is buying it. In fact, the response online has been swift, brutal, and unfiltered. Rosie O'Donnell publicly slammed the wedding as a gross display of excess. Others on social media compared the event to a cartoon wedding, staged by people completely out of touch with reality. Memes flooded the internet, calling the couple tone-deaf, gaudy, and embarrassing. And while Lauren's Vogue cover was meant to elevate her public profile, it also invited intense criticism. Many saw it as the final straw, proof that fashion had officially sold out to the highest bidder. And instead of celebrating her, people questioned what she actually brought to the table beyond her marriage. And that's the deeper issue here, not whether Lauren Sánchez is worthy of a Vogue cover, but what her presence there represents. A shift in who gets access to influence in a world where billionaires are increasingly blurring the lines between love, power, and legacy, and where culture itself is becoming just another asset to be traded, packaged, and gifted.
That's going to take us by surprise, you think? I think that the show is, it reveals a lot about, relationship things that I've been dealing with privately that nobody knows about, and just, life post-divorce and living with my sisters in our 20s. It's sort of like a Sex in the City meets Swamp People. We're from the deep, deep South, and we all live in Manhattan now, and we're chasing our dreams. And so,
and you're all stunning, by the way.
What, I'm the prettiest, right? No, just kidding.
Yes, of course.
I'm kidding.
You're all equally gorgeous. And are you still single and ready to mingle right now? Anyone you're interested in maybe, meeting inside?
No, I mean, brand the name
never
Lauren.
know. I am single,
Sanchez
ready.
appearing on a Vogue cover wasn't met with admiration or celebration by fashion critics. It was met with confusion, mockery, even anger, because for many her inclusion felt like the end of an era and the beginning of something they weren't ready for. Not innovation, not disruption, but intrusion. A billionaire inserting his influence into a space that was once protected by artistic merit and editorial independence. And while some tried to spin it as a modern update to an outdated institution, others knew better. They could see the difference between organic evolution and strategic replacement. They could feel the weight of wealth behind the camera lens. And that weight was shifting everything. The timing of Anna Wintour's exit only made the speculation feel more justified, because here was the queen of fashion, a woman who for decades made and broke careers, suddenly stepping down, and not with a dramatic farewell or a new chapter announcement, but with a quiet shift to a less visible role, one that conveniently kept her name in the credits, but pulled her away from the front lines. Just as the magazine was facing the biggest identity crisis of its modern history, and too many that felt like a red flag, Anna Wintour stepping back at the exact moment a Billionaire's wife appears on back-to-back Vogue covers was more than coincidence. It was context, and it didn't help that Condé Nast was simultaneously laying off staff, shutting offices, and consolidating brands, all of which signaled one thing to industry insiders: someone was getting ready to make a deal, and the pieces were being moved to accommodate that deal. And while Bezos' camp continued to deny any involvement, the moves behind the scenes kept aligning with what corporate playbooks would call pre-acquisition restructuring. And then there's the wider cultural impact of all this, because the fashion industry doesn't operate in a vacuum. It reflects and amplifies the values of the moment. And right now those values are under fire. People are tired of seeing billionaires reshape the world in their image. They're tired of watching powerful men accumulate influence, not through vision or creativity, but through sheer financial muscle. And when that muscle starts to flex in the direction of media and fashion, the reaction is often visceral, because those are the spaces where identity is shaped, where self-expression is born, where history is recorded. And when it starts to feel like those spaces are being bought and sold like wedding gifts, it changes how we see them. It changes what they mean. And that's where the backlash against Lauren Sánchez starts to look a lot less personal and a lot more structural. It's not about her specifically, it's about what she represents: a shift in access, a new playbook for influence, one that doesn't require talent or legacy, just connection and leverage. And that's a scary thought for people who spent their lives building careers in this industry, for editors, writers, stylists, models, designers who played by the old rules and suddenly found those rules no longer apply. And the worst part is the silence, because amid all this speculation and discomfort, there's been very little transparency, no clear statements, no behind-the-scenes interviews, no editorials explaining the shift. It's just been silence from Condé Nast, silence from Bezos, silence from Lauren herself, and that silence has become deafening because it leaves space for rumors to grow and grow. They have forums, and fan sites have exploded with theories. Some say Bezos is planning to restructure Condé Nast into a content hub for all his media ambitions. Others believe he's grooming Lauren to be a modern media queen, someone who can reshape the public narrative around billionaires by appearing relatable, aspirational, and in control. And there's even speculation about the Met Gala, that Lauren might be angling to become its new host or figurehead, turning fashion's most elite night into a glittery celebration of tech wealth and marital alliances. And the thought of that alone has sent fashion lovers into a panic. Not because Lauren isn't capable, but because the idea of the Met Gala being curated by a billionaire couple, rather than the editorial voice of a fashion institution, feels like the final step in turning culture into currency, an expression into an extension of empire. And if that happens, if the whispers prove true and Bezos or someone in his circle takes over a major stake in Condé Nast, the fallout could be enormous, not just for the brands involved, but for the entire editorial industry, because suddenly every decision, every cover, every story could be seen as influenced by the billionaire behind the curtain. And that's not just a conflict of interest, it's a cultural earthquake. As the world watches this story evolve in real time, the stakes are only getting higher, because the idea of Jeff Bezos stepping into the world of fashion with his wife Lauren Sánchez. As the face of a new era isn't just a flashy rumor anymore, it's a potential blueprint for what happens when personal relationships collide with global influence. And the fallout from that collision is already being felt across every layer of the fashion and media industries, from the editors and creative directors trying to protect the integrity of their platforms to the audiences and readers wondering whether the things they love are slowly being transformed into glossy trophies for the mega rich. And what makes this moment especially volatile is how easily it all seems to be happening without anyone openly admitting it. No press conferences, no official partnerships, no clear-cut announcements, just a quiet reshuffling of titles, a couple of high-profile covers, a few strategic layoffs, and a silence that speaks louder than any official statement ever could. And that silence is what's keeping the suspicion alive, because people don't just believe the rumors, they feel them in their gut. They see the patterns and the timing, and they know enough about how billionaires operate to understand that by the time the public finds out, the deal is already done. And for many longtime supporters of Vogue and Condé Nast, the fear isn't just that the company might be sold, it's that its soul might be sold in the process. Because legacy matters in fashion, taste matters, experience matters, and when you start replacing those values with access, privilege, and proximity to power, it changes the entire game, and not in a good way. Just look at the online reaction to Lauren Sanchez's covers. The backlash wasn't just about the clothes or the photo shoot or even her public persona. It was about what it all represented: the fear that a place once reserved for pioneers and icons was now available to anyone who could afford the buy-in, the idea that if you married the right person you could skip the line and get handed the keys to an empire. And while some defended her appearance as a reflection of modern womanhood and evolving standards, the truth is most people saw it as a marketing move, a calculated attempt to legitimize her presence in a world that never really welcomed her. And that's not just harsh, it's heartbreaking, because fashion at its best has always been about breaking boundaries, challenging norms, and lifting up those who deserve the spotlight. And now it's being accused of doing the exact opposite, closing ranks around wealth and influence, and shutting out authenticity in favor of spectacle. And in the midst of all this, Anna Wintour's quiet departure continues to loom large, because she wasn't just an editor, she was a symbol of consistency, a tastemaker whose vision guided the industry through decades of change. And the fact that she's stepping aside without a real explanation has left a vacuum, of space that many believe is being filled not by talent but by transaction. And when you add all these elements together, you start to see why the rumors won't die down, because they don't feel like fiction. They feel like the inevitable next step in a world where the rules no longer apply, where billionaires rewrite tradition with the stroke of a pen or the swipe of a credit card, and where legacy institutions like Vogue are just one acquisition away from becoming personal brands for the world's richest couples. And the fear extends beyond fashion, because Condé Nast isn't just a fashion house. It's a media empire with influence that stretches into politics, culture, art, and entertainment. And if Jeff Bezos or anyone in his orbit gains control of that influence, it could have far-reaching implications beyond glossy pages and red carpet photos. Because editorial decisions matter, the stories we read, the voices we hear, the narratives that get amplified or silenced, they all shape our understanding of the world. And when those decisions are potentially influenced by personal agendas or private empires, the risk is that we lose the very thing that makes journalism and fashion powerful in the first place: independence and credibility. And that's the conversation more people are starting to have beneath the memes and the headlines and the jokes. There's a serious discussion brewing about the future of culture and whether we're witnessing the slow erosion of editorial independence at the hands of unchecked wealth. Because if this story turns out to be true, if even a fraction of it is accurate, then we're looking at a future where power is measured not by vision or leadership, but by who you marry and how much you can afford to spend on influence. And that's a dangerous precedent, not just for fashion, but for every industry that relies on public trust and cultural relevance. Because once those lines blur, once the audience begins to doubt the authenticity of what they're seeing, the entire system begins to unravel. And maybe that's why this story refuses to go away, not because it's scandalous or salacious or wrapped in high fashion drama, but because it touches a nerve. It reveals a growing discomfort with the way our world is being reshaped, not by ideas or ideals, but by a handful of people with enough money to do whatever they want.